Yes, thank you everyone for joining this session today. We have the pleasure of having Tim Beard, who worked here at Sanga within the GSU team as a lead product manager. And we'll be looking into being more productive with AI as a presentation from himself. And I'm pleased to announce that he has recently released a book on smarter living with AI, how you can harness AI for productivity, pleasure, and profit, whatever those mean. Tim is probably should just read what he said. Yeah, Tim is an entrepreneur and consultant specializing in AI enhanced solutions that empower individuals and small businesses to work smarter, not harder. With a background in engineering, product management, and technical innovation, Tim has a passion for demystifying complex technologies and making them accessible to everyone, hence the topic we're having today. So with no further ado, I'm just going to hand over to Tim.
Thanks very much, Joshua. It's really lovely to see those of you I know before. I already know, lovely to see you again, and those I don't know, lovely to meet you. Thank you for joining the call today. So yeah, as Joshua said, I worked here until relatively recently, till last summer, in the GSU, until the cull. And I was product management lead there, and I hired Stanley. I'm so glad he's got a new job within the organization. It's just fantastic. But since leaving, I've kind of gone back a little bit to what I used to do before. I used to work in a company, way before AI was cool, that used AI to augment the human ability to invent. This is pre-large language models and things like that. But we were doing some of the early stage work of that, using AI to analyze language, pick out. In our case, we were picking out inventive signals from all of the scientific and technology research that had been going on around the world, and we'd analyze all of that data, or use the AI to analyze that data, pick out these inventive signals, which we could then use to create new inventions. So then, well, I left there to join Sanger for a couple of years, but since going away from that, I've kind of gone back to AI because it's become all the rage. Since there was a big watershed moment in 2022 with the release of ChatGPT publicly, but of course that wasn't the starting point of AI, generative AI, by any means. It was the kind of moment it exploded onto the world stage, and that was about 2 years ago. So it's really interesting to come back now and see how, as an organization, Sanger is using generative AI. I mean, we're talking here mostly about generative AI. Obviously, Sanger does a lot of AI or algorithmic stuff to do with data analysis already. That's not really the focus here. The focus here is on using generative AI, particularly large language models like ChatGPT and image generators and things like that. So shall I try and share a presentation? Do you think it'll work? Oh, here we go. Can you see that? Bypass the system. Yeah. Is that for working?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Overguard AI, that's the name of my company. I set up after Sanger. So we're talking about AI productivity today. That's all right. I mean, the goal for today really is hopefully to inspire people to use AI more productively within Sanger, particularly within Sanger product teams. That doesn't mean with product managers just, but within. As the focus is the product, it's a product team focus, I thought let's particularly focus on that. But I think a really useful thing at a juncture like this is to explore what's already going on. As mentioned, it's just over 2 years now since ChatGPT went mainstream, and I imagine everybody here has used large language models to some extent. And I mean, it's really interesting. When I was researching my book and talking to different people, it's really interesting how people have had very different journeys on how they've been using AI. large language models in particular. Some people have kind of picked them up and run with them right from the start and have been using them really productively and doing really cool things with them. Others have kind of are quite scared of them. I think they're scared of maybe it's going to take their jobs, or just kind of feel a little bit icky about the whole thing, and that's quite understandable, I think. So I think it's interesting. A good place to start, I think, would be if we sort of go around and see how people are using or not using them, and then I share some of my learning and experience and see if that's useful for others. So I hope that sounds all right. And I think the particular message I want to get to, and this is a really strong product message, for product people, product managers aren't about doing more work. Product managers are about delivering more value. And one of the real dangers with this generative AI, it's so easy to generate content or images or AI slop, as they call it. You can just generate millions and millions of this stuff, as people have. That doesn't mean it has value. Just because you're producing output doesn't mean you're producing outcomes or value. And I think when you combine the sort of the product mindset of delivering value with these tools, that's when you can get a really positive way forward. You can actually use the AI to help you identify what is valuable and what you should be working on, rather than simply just doing the work for you. And that's where I think that the main productivity gains can be got. I was just going to start with this. You may have heard this already, but Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, he lost $20 billion the other day. NVIDIA dropped by $600 billion on the stock market, but he's still all right. He's still doing all right, I guess. But one of the things he said, I don't know if he originated it, but he certainly said it. AI is not going to take your jobs. The person who uses AI is going to take your jobs. So it's not that you're going to be replaced by AI, but those who are using AI and using it productively are going to be so much more productive than you if you're not using it. That's why you're going to lose your job. So AI is inevitable. It's here to stay. You may as well learn how to use it well. Does anyone disagree with that? Just out of interest.
Not at all.
Okay. So maybe then we start with a discussion, just sort of round the table, about how people are using it currently at Sanger, which models you're using, which capabilities. Is there any kind of officially sanctioned use of it, or are people just using it off their own backs? And if you're not using it, why are you not using it? So that's. Does anyone have any interesting things to say up front?
I think it's more informal within Sanger. Stand to be corrected. But like when people make use of it, they tend to disclose it, which I think is right, because you can't claim knowledge that doesn't come from you, basically. So you tend to disclose it that, oh, this is inspired by maybe ChatGPT, right? And I think that's totally fine. But I think that's how it's currently used. I mean, based off the people I've interacted with, I think that's how it's currently used, within Sanger.
To build on what Stanley's saying, so there's a community of practice for AI adoption and use and governance at Sanger. So I am part of that community, and what goes on there is to, at some point, explore a lot of these large language models and how to utilize them for Sanger use cases. But beyond that, it's also the risk assessment. And then you have this red, amber, green framework that sort of guides people around what is considered red as no-go zone, or you use with so much risk involved. What you consider as amber, where you have some risk, where you can live with it. And then those apps or solutions that are considered as green. At the moment, I think ChatGPT is one of them.
Well, that's green, is it?
Yes,
Okay,
because we have a workspace system around it to ensure that whatever interaction is happening there is not being used to train the models. I think it's now becoming widely adopted system across the board, where some of these large language model companies claim to not use your interactions for training. So there's that. And I think the Zoom AI companion is also another one that is on the green. That it is on green doesn't mean you just hand off jobs over to it and you run off. You have to be like a co-pilot kind of relationship where the human interference checkmates whatever is being produced. So that's what I know happening around the use of AI, but also what Stanley mentioned. If you've discovered something that is useful, you can open up a conversation around it to say, oh yeah, I found this very useful, like using Mailmaestro, for instance, to help with your emails, or using Notebook LM to sort of condense or demystify heavily voluminous material. So all those conversations then cascade into the AI community of practice if there's a need to exploit even further to check for risk and the potential of adoption. There is a framework around building a business case for, or let's adopt particular software. I know I did that for Canva because Canva does have some AI capabilities. So that is happening across the institute, and it's been controlled or led by the Kaizen team as well.
Okay.
But then on the personal scale, I use ChatGPT for many different things because right before they even started the idea of GPT stores, I'm sure I've mentioned it to you, I created personas for different kinds of chats. So it's just getting into the bit of preconditioning before preconditioning became a thing where you can have dedicated GPTs in your ChatGPT or with other languages. I'll leave it for others.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Are other people doing that? Where if they're using like ChatGPT, have they created personas that they kind of go back to and then continue chats with?
So does that mean every time when you use ChatGPT that it's in a secured environment, so nothing is actually flowing out into the ether and gets absorbed by the AI?
That is what the legal agreement says. It says it doesn't use your interaction to train the model.
Whether you believe that or not is another.
So that's why I'm saying that's what it says. But again, the reality is if that were to be leaked at some point or infringed upon, then you have a legal basis to action the betrayal of trust, I guess. Yeah.
And how do you access that? It's always via VPN or when you're on site, or
You can have it on your phone, like the normal ChatGPT app. You can download them now. You could download them on your laptop, and I think recently
There is no separate enterprise version or anything of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just workspaces.
Yeah.
also the generic ChatGPT promises now that they don't use anything for learning from.
Especially on the workspaces. So if you have workspaces, then it says that it's secured.
I'm just getting up. Yeah, so this is the ChatGPT app. I think you can.
I only just found out 2 days ago that there was an app.
Oh, right.
I didn't know.
Yeah, although actually the web, you can do more on the web.
I didn't know people used it that deep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There are sort of, it does. So actually, I should probably turn that off.
Oh.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Turn that off. Turn that off. So you can, in theory, turn on ChatGPT. You can tell it not to use your data. It says we take steps to protect your privacy. Who knows? Who knows? Can you trust these companies? Especially in the political environment today, who knows what they can get away with. But it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't say you can turn off sharing of your data, but then your chats are still going into the ether. So I think you still need to be circumspect, I would say, about what you put on there. What's my slide there?
Yeah, so please do check the settings because some of these things are included without making a big announcement about it to say, oh, now you can actually turn it off. So it's turned on by default, which is a bit spooky. So you have to go there and, like he did, turn it off from making.
I'm sure I turned it off at some point, so it's probably worth checking.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about others in terms of your?
I use ChatGPT also, specifically a bioinformatics GPT, sometimes to improve my scripts or when I have problems running something specific.
Mm.
Sometimes I ask it if ChatGPT can see the error or something like that.
So you put your code in, you get it to look at your
Not
code in
only
Python.
coding, but sometimes I say I'm trying to do this analysis and get these kind of errors.
Do you find it successful generally?
Sometimes at least give ideas. Yeah, so give some ideas. Sometimes say, for example, review this part or try to see if maybe, I don't know, give some ideas and sometimes works, sometimes not.
Interesting. What about yourself?
I'm not using it.
Have you ever? I mean, have you ever
No.
tried it out? And why? I mean, what is your big? What?
So many we touched on already in
Yeah,
the
I know.
past, right? I mean, there are quite a few examples where developers told me they copied and pasted their code in it just to see how efficient it is, and they knew exactly what their code was doing. And they said, okay, the reply to the question, what is this code doing? What ChatGPT came back with was completely inaccurate, right? So at that stage, when the last time I asked someone who knew exactly what they put in there and expected a specific answer, which was incorrect, it was unreliable. So I just said, okay, why? And then this is not that long ago, right? So that means whatever you put in there, you need to double check. Where I question, does this double checking actually really increase efficiency, or is it an additional step that we need to add on all our processes now to always make sure that we can actually trust the output of this? So that's one of the things, right? Besides leak confidentiality information you do put in there. The risk of, at some point it is way above intelligence than we are, which at this stage it is already, right? So there are whole sectors of jobs that technically can be done by that thing now. I mean, those are just a few. There's so many other reasons why. And I do think a lot of skill sets we get through practice, right? Through doing it again and again. So every time when I hear someone who's not mother tongue English saying, I use it to draft my emails, it's like, oh, okay, so you're now relying on a tool. So you are preventing yourself to getting to a stage to do it by yourself and develop that skill by yourself. So you are hindering your own development by using a crutch that helps you to reach that goal, which I don't think is a benefit to us at all.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I think they're all valid.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever be convinced?
No.
I mean, to be fair, we all know that the issue of hallucination has been a big thing with these large language models. However, in parallel, it's also being improved at such an exponential rate that some of the errors that you're prone to having yesterday could already be going off by today. I mean, we're playing around with DeepSeek, and some of the things you could do yesterday was not coming up as of today. That's literally just 24 hours. So it's moving at a very incredible pace that you practically have to be playing catch up every time. Personally, I also feel that restraint about using it, but when you think about it again, it's like flowing against the tide, right? It's here. How do we maximize it? I try to see an opportunity in using it. Doesn't mean it's perfect, certainly not. But yeah, try not to lose the sense of being authentic as a human and developing intellectually on the basis of using AI is certainly not something we'd like to do. But if it does help your job become easier, like in an hour, you get things that you otherwise would have spent 8 hours done, then why not? That's my personal opinion. Not trying to convince you, but I'm just trying to walk through, because I do agree, your points are very valid. People tend to become less looking for softer word to use,
Yeah.
less brainstorming, because they can just put everything on these AI tools. But we should remember they are just tools at the end of the day, and it will shine through your mental capability when you use them.
I think it's a really interesting point you made about
The skill set.
the crutch as well,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
becoming a
is.
crutch. And I was reading a really interesting article. It talks about the tyranny of tiny tasks on one perspective versus the value of kind of mindless tasks. And mindless, maybe mindless, but sort of repetitive tasks. And then actually, yeah, these are very different perspectives. And for some people, a lot of the productivity industry is around replacing all of these tasks. Saying, save your time by automating all of these tasks. But I mean, to that point, often you lose something in doing that as well. And the counter argument was around the value of repetitive tasks from not just from a learning perspective, but from sort of a mindfulness perspective, from a satisfaction perspective as well, is that the value of kind of doing these small jobs. So but I think the lesson there is just be careful what you hand off to AI. Just because AI can do something doesn't mean it should do something. But at the same time, that doesn't, just because AI shouldn't be doing one thing doesn't mean it shouldn't be doing another. I think that's kind of interesting. But I'd say there's another business analyst on the call, I think, isn't there? I was wondering how his perspective was on.
There's a hand up actually, Sendu. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Oh,
yeah. So just kind of continuing on from that. So I'm a software developer, and I have started using GitHub Copilot in my weekly editor. So yeah, if you ask ChatGPT and other models, questions like, what does this code do, or can you fix this code? Yes, it will frequently produce garbage. So, and yes, it could be a crutch, but where it becomes useful is when you're already an expert and you are using it purely to save yourself time typing. So in the text editor, I can start typing something and it will autocomplete exactly what I was going to type. So it is just saving me time. It is purely a productivity boost. If it produces nonsense, I will know straight away that it was nonsense, and I will ignore its autocomplete suggestion. So in that sense, if you're an expert, it will increase your productivity.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Someone did say something around, again, no offense, but this is how rawly the person said it. Says, these AI tools would only show your level of intelligence at the end of the day. If you're very smart, it will make you look so smarter, and you know what the alternative is. But I think it tallies with what Sendu is saying. Like, if you know what you're trying to get, even when it comes to drafting an email, if you know what you're trying to do and you tell it, it could save you the time and help with the tonality. Some things you are not even thinking about. Oh, I should have said, how was your day? And I was just going to say, hey, I got your response and blah, 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 blah. And then bring some of those nuances that helps with cordial communication into your email. But yeah, I agree with you, Sander.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've used AI to build apps for me from scratch. I mean, I have been a coder in the past, but I'm not an expert in anything. But I used it. I built with my company. I just wanted something that would build like I'd never used Node.js. I'd never really used Bootstrap before, but I got it. I said I just want to build a simple interface to allow me to create, use the APIs to talk to ChatGPT.
Wow.
And I kind of gave it some basic guidelines. It started building something, built a Node.js server for me. I'd never done that before. I'd JavaScript before, but I've not actually built Node.js. But it did all of this sort of donkey work around that I kind of understand. I couldn't pretend I understand it fully, but I can look at it and go, I kind of know what's going on when something goes wrong. And then built front end with use Bootstrap for the components and all that kind of stuff. I then iterated, and it just kind of built the stuff I want. And it built something that was fairly useful for me now. I mean, I use it this just interfaces with OpenAI. You can choose your model. You can create, in this case, personas. So it's like Joshua was talking about. Give it a system prompt, so I created a product manager persona, which it tells you role, objectives, etc. So it sort of sets this guy up, and then I can have conversations with it based on what I'm doing. I mean, this isn't anything particularly that you couldn't do with the ChatGPT app itself or the website itself, but it kind of gives me a little bit more control. It works the way I wanted to do. And yeah, it was really easy to do. It was really easy to build with. I used Cursor for this. Cursor was pretty amazing. That's a IDE that's got built-in support for. It does all the code completion stuff, which is kind of magical sometimes. It's really quite scary sometimes. As you start typing something, it just seems to know what you want to write. It's like, how did it know that? That's a bit spooky.
That's scary.
Yeah. But, and to sort of send this point, sometimes it does go off the rails, and it's like, it's just, there were times when I ended up having, it took longer probably to debug than it would have done, because it did something and it wasn't quite clear why it had done that, and I couldn't get it to fix it. So I had to go in and fix it by hand. That's kind of the way it is. All right, I'm mindful of the time, actually. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about their current usage before we move on? If not, we can carry on. I mean, what the focus, although it's obviously getting away from us already, as I've already said this, I think, it's about AI for product teams. It's about augmenting, not automating or replacing. And I think AI is best when it's used to augment your, as you say, like augment your intelligence, not replace it or try to be a crutch for that. And here again, it focuses on generative AI, not on other sort of machine learning type stuff that Sanga's doing in abundance for data analysis. I think a useful way of thinking about it, though, is looking at the different use cases in different areas. So we talked about personal, and I think that's where everybody started, right? Everyone suddenly had access to ChatGPT, and they could go in and use it personally if they wanted to, or not, didn't want to. And you can use it for research, you can use it for summarizing, you can use it for drafting documents, exploring ideas, writing code. You can do all of that stuff, and that's great. The problem is everybody uses it differently. Some people are trained, kind of have picked it up. Other people may be using it inappropriately, taking, organizations that don't have any guidelines around this. I think there have been recent studies of, organizations that have got AI PCs in, and everyone's supposed to be using AI, but they haven't provided any training on using it. So productivity has actually gone down because everyone's playing around with this stuff without really knowing what they're doing. So that's problematic. But I think when you start to add value is when you start thinking about it collaboratively. How can you use these things collaboratively? And I think there are some really quite easy wins in this area. At a team level, you can imagine having sort of group policy support. So onboarding documents, that's always a big thing. When you got a new starter, there's all this documentation you're supposed to read. And sometimes it'll have a search on it, and you can kind of search for different things. But you can take that so much further. If you ingest all these documents in some way, you can build a tool that actually has all these access to all of these documents. It understands what onboarding is about, and someone coming on can just ask questions of that system and go, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And it's not, it's much more advanced than just doing a search. It can actually give you customized answers using a LLM to answer that. And that can be really helpful for new starters. Or sort of group brainstorming as well is quite another, is a good one. You can be in meetings as a team and get it up, sort of chuck up some ideas, bounce those ideas around. Those are, certainly the brainstorming is a really low hanging fruit. I think building some kind of group policy support system is relatively straightforward thing to do if there's a will to do it, and potentially that can massively increase productivity and increase the onboarding journey of new starters. So that's a relatively quick win. And then at a strategic level, that's where it gets really valuable. But there you need a sort of organizational level vision and support. And it sounds like there's some work to do that at the Sanger level. Of course, the problem with that is it takes interminable time to get anything agreed, which is why everyone goes on with the personal stuff. But I think, yeah, if you've got team leaders here, particularly sort of product team leaders, I think, building support for doing something collaboratively could be really valuable, and that can then potentially inform strategic level input. And that's at a later stage. I just wanted to give an idea. I just wanted to give this to something I discussed at lunch. So here's a typical scenario of using AI. So worker, I need to create a report for my boss. ChatGPT, write this report based on the summary. ChatGPT, here's your report. Worker, cool, job done. Sends to boss. Unread. Boss to worker, thanks for the report. Gives worker a pat on the back. Boss to himself, I don't have time to read this. ChatGPT, summarize this report. ChatGPT, here's your summary. Do you think that's productive? I mean, is there any value in what's going on there? I mean, and yet this is happening, right?
Yeah.
And this is happening a lot. And this is, I mean, there's this concept of AI slop, which you've probably heard of, and the fact that the internet is flooded with AI generated content.
Yeah.
They called Shrimp Jesus a few months ago, which was like these bizarre pictures of Jesus merged with crustacean, which flooded Facebook. And but this is another example of AI slop. There's absolutely no value being added by this process, and yet there's that sense of somehow being productive. Oh yeah, like I saved time writing this report. Says the worker, and the boss said, I saved time reading this report. And I think this is the real danger of where things can so easily go wrong. And this is as product people, we all know this. There's so often the case where something, work is done, but value is not created. And I think, again, as product people, we have much better antennae, I think, for these kind of situations where things seem to be productive, but just simply aren't.
There's one thing. If the worker has a summary, provides a detailed summary of the work done, then the thing that's happening here is that ChatGPT is bringing it into the structure. That's like the official workflow, right? It was translating the summary, which is the actual valuable data, into that structure. I mean, these are just paperwork.
Yeah.
So it's actually removing that paperwork. Again, the boss is going back to the summary.
Yeah.
So, we can actually send the summary.
Exactly.
But to officialize it, we can also use the AI.
Yeah.
I still see that as a value added.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can see that, and particularly, but it's only value within the constraints of an organization that values those kind of reports. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's been an interesting. I was reading an interesting article about. I touch on politics, but in the US, there's a lot of this push to reduce waste. The Department of Government Efficiency sort of stuff. And absolutely horrendous things are happening there. But there was the one case saying, well, within Congress, for example, there are all these reports that need to be written. And there's someone questioned how many reports do you think Congress needs to write each year? So what, hundreds of thousands of reports are generated by Congress each year. And of course, no one has time to read any. And one of the reports, for example, that is written only because no one has ever said to stop writing it, is the annual report on the dollar coin, right? There's never been a dollar coin. But somebody has to write a report on the state of the dollar coin every year.
Wow.
I think that I suppose the point I'm making there is, a lot of organizations have this accretion of unnecessary bureaucracy that just kind of builds up over time. And I guess the thing is, if you're then looking at AI to help you with that, fine, that adds value within the framework that exists, but that framework's terrible. So a better thing to do would be to use AI and use that time to find ways to improve that process. I guess that would be the point I make.
Tim, one small
yeah.
question. So this was actually, I mean, I was having this question all week. So how safe would the data be? I mean, as it might be a ChatGPT or anything or any AI model. So let's say we just take an example of that report, and let's say that might be some unimportant data. And how safe would that be using it over here?
How safe in terms of how reliable is the data, or how likely is that data to leak out?
Let's say just in terms of hacking or something else, I don't know, but
Data leaks.
Leaking.
Yeah, leaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, millions of people are uploading their data to ChatGPT. ChatGPT promises privacy.
Okay.
There will probably be a hacking scandal at some point.
Let's hope not.
But I think I don't think it's any. Is it any worse than the current situation where you're putting stuff on the cloud?
Or emails.
Or email, if your email's in the cloud, if you're using, you're using Google, you use Gmail within this organization.
Yeah.
That's all in the cloud. Use Google Docs and things like that. I don't know if it's any worse than that. Particularly.
Yeah, I get it. It's all the same. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as it's not on your local computer, anything can happen.
Good use, bad use. So I think it's worth. We kind of looked at. Well, I'd argue is a bad use. It's an understandable use, but it's plugging a. It's solving a problem that shouldn't have been there in the first place. If you like. So where was I going to? I mean, I was going to just mention. I think most people are probably familiar with most of the tools around, at least to some extent, if they want to be, at least. In terms of tools, we got, DeepSeek. We'll come on to DeepSeek.
Yeah, that's a big conversation.
Indeed, it is. Yeah. Typically, you've got the foundational models like OpenAI and Claude Sonnet and Gemini and now DeepSeek, which underpin a lot of other things. And then you got the reasoning model. So the newer thing is the reasoning models. So during 2024, the big change over the last 2 years of these things has been moving from these basic word generators, which is all they are really, the word predictors, to something, adding more and more kind of smarts to them. And it started with people saying, show your reasoning. So if you ask your ChatGPT to show its reasoning, it'll go through the steps, and you can identify problems and flaws in the logic and things potentially better. But then that started getting built in, and then the model started getting trained on sort of using a technical reinforcement learning to actually, it comes up with an argument for why something is, and then that argument is evaluated, and if it's good, then that reinforces the model. So now you've got these new reasoning models like OpenAI O1, which actually spends a lot more time thinking. So it essentially generates lots of different possible answers, and then it kind of evaluates those answers against some criteria to come up with the one it actually gives you, based on some kind of consideration of the logic. And then you got, more recently, as I'm sure everyone's seen in the news, DeepSeek has caused flutters in the market, which is a apparently very cheaply trained China model developed by a small team in China for a fraction of the price of OpenAI's ChatGPT, but it's delivering results on a par with them. But it's also raising lots of concerns, because if you access it online on the sort of the servers, it's hosted in China. There are definitely restrictions and controls around what answers it gives you. If you're asking about anything sensitive in China, it climbs up. And then there's concern about how that data is being used. And while we're certainly, if we're concerned about how OpenAI are using our data, then we should definitely be concerned about how the Chinese government is using data that is given to DeepSeek. However, one thing it does do, it allows you, it's open source, or at least open weights, i.e. the weights of the model and the model design itself are open. So you can download it and you can run it on your own hardware. And that, is a massively beneficial thing to do. And we'll look at that in a minute. Yes. There are also loads of other tools like aggregators that bring together lots of different models in one place, and you can try out different models and do all sorts of funky stuff. But that's an easy way to waste time as well, I find.
Yeah.
More usefully, and these have been developed over the last year, particularly, you've got some really cool tools now, like from iterative working, ChatGPT Canvas and Anthropic artifacts, Claude artifacts, which allow you to create documents or code, and then go in and sort of refine them bit by bit. So, yeah, absolutely. One of the worst things to do is just get AI to generate content for you and then chuck it out, because that's like, where's the value? Where are you adding any kind of value to that? However, if your model is primed, for example, if you give it an example of your own style, you can say, well, okay, generate a draft within the style, and it'll give you a starting point. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go with that starting point. In fact, you absolutely shouldn't go with that starting point. But with things like ChatGPT Canvas, it'll get that starting point up there. You can go in there, you can change it manually, you can get it to rework sections for you, and refine it. And that's really quite powerful. And that's because these tools work best as a co-pilot, as a partner. And so if you can iterate, you're much more likely to end up with something useful. You're getting the value from its suggestions, not from its pure, unadulterated content. Perplexity is really cool for web search. I know people have used that.
I use that.
I mean, most of the model, ChatGPT offers web search now as well, but I know Perplexity seems to present things in a nice way. So if you're doing a bit of research, Perplexity is really good. NotebookLM, you've mentioned, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
If you've got lots of documents, stick them in. It's a Google thing. You can upload loads of documents, the system can summarize it, you can query those documents. It'll even generate a podcast, which is a bit freaky. I uploaded my book thing, got it.
Deep dive into
into my book, and that was kind of interesting. But that's it's useful, and I mean I think you get value in different ways, and actually the podcast sounds like a bit of a gimmick, but I think you absorb information differently often when you hear it, and it also means you can listen to something while you're doing driving or whatever where you couldn't read. So that's a really cool tool to look at. But taking it further, there's a new thing from Google called Deep Research. I don't know if anyone's come across that, but that is really quite powerful. And it'll go on the web. It'll do a lot of research. It'll come up with lots of literature for the topic you're doing. It'll come up with a plan first of all, which is quite nice. Saying, right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go look for this literature on this topic, and then I'm going to analyze it and summarize it and refine it, blah, blah, blah. You can then edit that plan, and then it can go away and execute the plan. So this is the start of what's called sort of AI agent. AI that can be a bit more autonomous and do things itself. So you can give it a research task, and then it'll go away and do a lot of that donkey work of finding documents and summarizing them and things like that. And I think that's something within Sanger potentially could be really, really useful.
Is there a filter incorporated already who prevents plagiarism? Because obviously, if you're writing specific things which are screened for that, that could be a problem.
Sorry, what?
Plagiarism, as in, for instance, if you're writing a book or scientific publication or research thesis, there's a program that screens the document for specific passages that you basically copied and pasted from published sections.
Yeah.
To prevent, and that clearly then states, okay, you've not written that, you copied it from someone else's work, which is a problem for people who write PhD theses or who publish journals or who write books. So if you do something like that you want to use and publish, is there a filter who indicates, okay, actually this section was previously
Just
published there and there,
I think when I was doing my master's thesis, there were some people who made that mistake.
Yeah.
And I think Turnitin was able to identify what content was AI generated. So they had to redo it.
Okay, so it highlights the
Yeah.
sections then, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just need to point out that we've got 8 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah.
Okay, we won't have time to. This is this deep research tool. We don't have time to talk about it, but it's really cool. I don't know if you need to be paid member to access it. You can get a month free though. So I was
Oh, okay.
signed up the other day. But basically, you can ask it to do a research activity, and it can do
Oh.
it. But if nothing else, just finding the sources and summarizing those sources is a massive time saver. And then the code generation tools like Cursor is amazing. VS Code now comes with Copilot kind of for free. It's all pretty. It's doing some pretty cool stuff if you're careful with it and you know what you're doing. Yeah, don't be afraid to experiment. That was what I was gonna say. I think back to this question of privacy, and I think that's a really big thing. And I think this is something that where Sangha has a real potential to be useful, particularly if you're going from the personal to collaborative, is you've got massive infrastructure here that would be able to run some of these models. There's a tool. There's a tool called Llama. Some of you may have played with it. That allows you to run models locally on your laptop. If you've got an M1 Mac or better, quite happily run those run models. So I mean, last night I downloaded. I'm running Llama here, so I downloaded DeepSeek as we were talking about earlier. I just the model itself, the full model is like 671 billion parameters. You can't run it on your laptop, but it's done these distills of models, which is like a smaller version that is, not as good as the big one, but it's still quite useful. And you can run that. This is a 7 billion parameter one that runs quite happily on a Mac, and quite fast as well. But now, what is interesting? Some of these people were saying, oh yeah, so this disappointed me. There's a standard question in a standard test for LLMs is, can they answer this question? How many R's in the word strawberry? And this is famous about a year ago when ChatGPT got it wrong, and it's like, how can it be so stupid? Now, what's really cool about this is a reasoning model, this DeepSeek R1. This is a distilled version. It's not that clever, but look, you can see it's reasoning. It's going through, and it's telling you what it's trying to do, and it's going through this whole rigmarole about trying to think through the problem. Just seeing it do that thinking is interesting itself, right? But then you say getting it wrong. It's so disappointing.
Yeah.
Just when you think these things are getting smart, it's like it doesn't.
correctly.
Yeah.
It's sometimes when typing it wrong, so it assumes the one with the double R is incorrect spelling and corrects it.
I don't know why. It doesn't handle that double R. It's so weird. It's so weird.
It just shows that the people who built it focused more on the process than the result.
Well, yeah, I think so. But then so this is the big.
You wanted to show the thinking.
So yesterday this worked fine. So this is a Chinese model, right? Tiananmen Square is the uprising is always. No, let's go back to this. So now this is really interesting. If you try this on the online version, it just clams up and just says, "Not going to tell you."
Because it's information from China.
Because there was in Tiananmen Square uprising in 1989, it was like a really sensitive topic in China, and it didn't happen officially.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the concerns about using DeepSeek is that it's tailored to the Chinese government official party line, and there's a risk of indoctrination or misinformation if you follow that. I mean, you could argue the same on the American trained models as well.
It's like the bias with
It could be bias.
white
Yeah.
and
Different
dark.
biases, but I think there's a different bias in
And that.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can see it's doing its whole argument here, which is it's really interesting to see it.
Yeah.
And the fact is, this is all running locally, so none of the data that you put on here is escaping anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think increasingly there's the ability to run these models locally and do something useful. So for example, if you want to do you could build personal knowledge base, essentially. To have all your documents, you don't want those documents shared with anybody, but you have them on your computer. You can set up a system called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, which essentially you're using this model to look at the data and produce, well-written answers. But the data itself is, all these documents you've given it. So you give it a load of documents, go, right, okay, answer questions on these documents, and it'll come back with that. And I think the models are good enough to answer those questions on the documents you give it, and it keeps it private because it keeps it in the machine. So I think there's some really promising options for along those lines. But you can go so much further. If why not run it on WSI infrastructure? You can happily run a $7 billion parameter model on locally. That's great. But if you're using some of the WSI infrastructure, you could potentially run, a full-size model. You could run one of these 650 billion parameter models, that DeepSeek one. You could run it locally. No data escapes the organization, and you could, all of those concerns over privacy and security are then kind of removed. But that needs a kind of organizational level approval to do that. You could run smaller models, I suspect, on that infrastructure without anyone complaining, I'd guess. But if you're running a massive one that's taking huge amounts of compute, maybe some of the questions.
Right.
We're out of time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. There are lots of okay, look. Well, I'll share the slides.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
We've only just touched on the topic, unfortunately. I just I'll leave you with a few things. First of all, I was going to pick up with Jensen because he's really cool. This is just touching on the idea that don't think of AI as something that will surpass humans. Don't think of something that will help humans become superhumans. It's about this whole message of using it to augment your own abilities. Just touching on the working smarter, not harder thing. Yeah, I think it's really important to think about the tasks you're doing. If you're giving a task to AI, does that task actually need to be done anyway? Instead, use AI to help you identify whether the work is really valuable. So you can ask it questions. You can give it context about the questions, the content. And if you've got a local model, it makes it, you feel safe about that. But you can also create like a persona, an accountability partner to test and question your ideas. And I think this is where it becomes useful, not generating AI slop content that you then email out, but actually using it for sort of self-reflection and just saying, like, here are some ideas. What do you think about this? You can ask it questions like, based on what you know about me. And if you're using ChatGPT with memory, it kind of keeps information about all the chats you've had, and you can ask useful questions like, based on what you know about me, what are my strengths and weaknesses? It can actually be a really useful tool for self-reflection. But you want it to critique often. LLMs tend to be very polite, but you can say, don't be polite, be brutal. Analyze my, give me the worst. And you can then use it to analyze the kind of your plans, come up with suggestions for the case for the work to be done and the work not to be done. And I think that's where you're adding real productivity value is by working out what's valuable to do and not do. And AI can really help with that. What was I going to say? Yeah, so you find are we like totally out of time? I just wanted to say on a product management level, creating a product manager coach is a really cool thing to do, and I use this quite a lot. Marty Kagan is my personal hero as a product manager. There are already GPTs created that sort of in his image. There's a great site, if you don't know, it's Silicon Valley Product Group. It's fantastic. It's about Silicon Valley type products. You might argue that we're not building those kind of products. I would disagree that we should be perhaps using that approach. But as product managers, it's a really great place to go to sort of validate your ideas and approaches and get ideas for saying what's the best practice for this. And yes, you can read the books, and you should read the books, but it often is useful to say, right, here's the specifics in my case, comment on that. And that's where AI really comes into its own. It's taking that knowledge of those books and applying it to your specific case. prototyping is another thing I'd suggest to product teams and product managers, not wanting to take jobs away from the programmers, but good product teams test ideas quickly, as possible with users to determine what's truly worth building. If you can prototype something, as I've done, you can build something in hours or days to test out new ideas. Why not? Doesn't have to be production ready, but you can get that out there, instrument it so you get feedback from users, and that's an incredibly valuable way to be a better product manager. And you don't necessarily need to go around the iterations of, especially in the structure that looks like you guys have got now in PSD, where you don't have developers next to you anymore. So if you want to test out ideas rather than having to go through hoops, you do it yourself. And then finally the knowledge base idea. So you can build your own personal knowledge base, as we talked about. All right, there we go. I'll stop there. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Tim. That was really helpful. Just to see.
And finally, there you go. Look, plug. Shameless plug for my book.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add this to the notification I'll send out for the recording. But we are very much up on time. But really, thank you. If you've got questions, I'm happy for you to send them to me, and then I will send them across to Tim, who will then respond to them. Or you can search for Tim on LinkedIn.
No, I'm happy to. I mean, if people are interested and think I can bring value in any way, let me know. I can always. Don't have to come in person. I guess I could.
Yes. I was already thinking around those lines. If we've got a number of appeal towards taking the discussion further, we could have a follow-up session that is mostly run online. But again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And you'll see our notification for future sessions. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Time goes so quickly.
Yes, yes, it does. Go.
And I was worried I wouldn't have time to.
Yeah,
Pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a good talk.